don't think it's about vanity metrics of fast growth. I think it's about really what your life looks like, when you're creating a business that's authentic and values led.
Well, hello and welcome to another guest interview here on the Profit with All podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and I'm stoked about the conversation we're about to have because I've got not only a law firm owner, not only a successful law firm owner, but she is a mom of two little ones, and I love anybody who's you're bringing up a family and also building a business. Um, we've got something to talk about. I love having these conversations because so many listeners are in this, and they're like, when they listen to somebody sharing their experiences, they think, yeah, it works for them, but I'm in this situation. There's no situation that's going to be harder than being a mom with young kids and running a business, and that's why I'm really excited to have Valerie Fenchel here on the show, founder and CEO of Fenchel Family Law, California-based firm that supports professionals and entrepreneurs navigating divorce and prenuptial agreements with strategy, discretion, and heart. A rebel in a buttoned-up industry, Valerie scaled her multi-million-dollar firm while becoming a mother of two, proving that profit, purpose, and personal evolution don't have to be at odds. She's passionate about leading a values-aligned team, redefining success, and helping people protect what matters most. Now, when I started my business, I started it the basis of starting my business was entrenched in allowing myself to be a parent. At the time that I decided to start my business, my ex was an alcoholic. My kids were going through that process, and I was taking them to therapy sessions, Alateen meetings, and working for somebody else. Although I had a great employer, very kind, very willing to allow me to do those things, I still had the feeling that I was kind of stealing from them when I was, taking that personal time and caring for my family. That was really the impetus of why I felt the need to go out and build my own thing. And then when I actually went to build it, I decided to accept slower growth so that I could prioritize my family, so that my kids were number one, my wife was number one, and that the business is number two. And so many people are out there in the marketplace with a message of, if you want to be successful in business, if you want your business to grow quickly, you have to sacrifice other things. It needs to come first. You need to treat it like it's your baby. And I think that messaging is false. I think that there's a lot of room for you to prioritize differently in your life. And I'm excited to jump into this conversation. Valerie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here. And wow, that is exactly how I feel and think. And I've never heard somebody put it exactly as you have put it. And I just knew you had been through something real rough based on how you show up in this world and how authentic and what a good human you are. And yes, I totally get it. I think when you have lived your life and seen a loved one go through any kind of mental health or substance abuse, issue, you have this thickness and resilience and grit. But I think you also have this self-awareness about what really living life means and how to really, I don't know, take responsibility for creating that life. And yeah, I don't think it's about vanity metrics of fast growth. I think it's about really what your life looks like, when you're creating a business that's authentic and values led.
Awesome. I appreciate you sharing that, but I want to take a step back for you, Valerie, and just kind of like let's just talk about your decision to start a law firm, right? Early stages.
Yeah.
Um, did you practice law somewhere before that? What made you decide to start your own firm? What was your reason for going out on your own?
Yeah, I was working for this lovely woman, Esther Lerner, who I absolutely adored. She was a big mentor of mine. She led her law firm with joy and just she would sing opera at her desk. But she really supported me becoming a rainmaker and building my own caseload. And this caseload was a bunch of really high conflict, intense cases going through trial that I didn't feel like I I was handling them all on my own, but I really desired to hand them in a different way with a whole team of people to, I think, provide the highest level of service to the client. And yeah, selfishly, to bring me up too, so that I wasn't in the trenches. And so that really is what catapulted me. I got really into watching Shark Tank and, thinking about business strategy. But yeah, that's kind of what catapulted me to start my own firm
How long ago did you start?
8 years ago.
So 8 years. If you think back to 8 years ago when you started, did you feel like you knew what you were doing? Did you feel like you had it figured out when you set out to do it? And did you start with a book of business and or a bankroll, or did you just kind of like leave your job and start your firm with, hey, I'm just gonna figure it out?
I think I was scared, but I also had this like manic, excited energy of like, wow, for the first in my time in my life, I have this opportunity to create something exactly as I dream or could imagine doing it with no guardrails put by someone else, or I don't have to worry about someone else's reputation or being part of someone else's brand. Kind of, I can just do it exactly as I want. And that was really freeing. Every client that had been personally referred to me, you came with me because they were my clients. But the clients from my old firm, I tried to convince them to stay there. I really wanted to leave on good terms. And yeah, it wasn't a big caseload, but that wasn't something that made me feel afraid. I was just so excited to finally get to handle, the clients as I desired and start kind of creating the life that I desired in order to eventually, have a family and have a more, balanced day-to-day life.
One of the things that a lot of law firm owners struggle with is disconnecting or separating themselves from being the attorney to being the business owner. And I've been very vocal about that recently because the more and more that I work with clients, the more I realize that until you're able to make that distinction and separation, you're holding yourself back from growth because every time that something comes up, you're like, okay, how do I do this? How do I fix this? How do I handle it? It's always you as the solution. And until you start building a team around you of people who are the solution providers and you're just kind of the puppet master pulling the strings, you haven't really built a business. And so if you think about your journey,
Yeah.
there's probably a time where you crossed that precipice, right? Like that was like, okay, I hired an attorney or I hired an office manager or I brought in a marketing person or there was something along the way that you like took something off of your plate that really freed you up to be able to accelerate your growth. Can you think back to when that was and what it was?
Yeah, sorry. I'm just so excited that you said puppet master with the string because that's how I think of myself. uh, yeah, I've always thought of myself that way since I started my firm. I think I just knew in my heart that I wasn't put on this world to be a litigator. I knew that I could do it and I would do it because I connected with my clients in this that's such a deep soul way where I wanted to help them so bad I'd do whatever it took. But I know it wasn't my nature. It's more in my nature to be behind the scenes, kind of creating the journey or making the attorneys that work for me the heroes and making sure they have everything they need. Finding people that are way smarter and more talented and more like warrior litigator built than I am. I never wanted to be the star of my firm because I always knew in my heart that there was someone better than me at doing that high level, challenging, legal work. And I just see family law firms that don't champion their attorneys and don't treat them like they should, and then the clients don't get that kind of experience they need. So I wanted to do it differently. I never wanted to be the star.
It's interesting because as you're sharing and as you're talking, it's becoming obvious to me and probably to our listeners as they listen to this that this is exactly why you're successful, right? Like this, um, the passion that you have for your clients, the amount that your deep rooted love for them and respect for them and caring for them is what's driving your purpose and why you do what you do. And at the same time, you understanding that you it's not you who needs to shine, it's everybody else in your firm that needs to shine. When your team is at the front lines and they're showing the world what your firm is able to do, that's way more powerful than you being at the front line showing the world what your firm is able to do. And you've championed that in a way that like was natural, felt natural to you, but a lot of other people may struggle with this. And I think that it's important to highlight and show that, hey, if it there are some ingredients to success, and it's not just, follow this cookie cutter approach, but it's really more about being passionate about what you do, loving your clients, loving your team, elevating them. And when you show up in that way, and what the other piece of this is, you lead from the top, right? Like, and we learned this in MBA school, right? But because you look at businesses and you wonder, like, how did the Enron collapse happen? How did how did the what was it? The Ford, I forget which car it was. The Ford Pinto had was a massive safety risk, and what we when we learned about this in school, it was like they knew about it for decades and they didn't do anything about it because they were after the money instead of the caring about the people that were getting injured or dying in these accidents. And when we look at those situations, it's always because the leadership led by example, right? They set the tone for the organization. And oftentimes we look at our business and we're like, oh, I'm too small, right? There's no tone to set. But the truth is that it starts from when you open up, when you become your own business owner. That's when it starts, and you're building that identity and you're building that muscle from day one. And we have to be really careful about what tone we're setting so that we're building the beast that we really are going to be proud of one day. And I think
Right.
that that's what separates you from maybe somebody who's 5 years into their journey and feels like they've gotten nowhere. And it might just be as simple as, am I building what I'm going to be proud of? And if not, how do I fix that?
Yeah, I think that that's really true. I don't think about it as top down. I guess I didn't go to business school. Maybe I should. Um, but yeah, I think about it, I guess, as setting an example. And I think over time, I've learned, when to set boundaries and be more of like a leader, but more when to step back and not do anything and let the people that work for me kind of solve their own problems, or like let me learn something from them. And I think that that can be more powerful, to really learn from the people I've hired. I think, I try to only find people that are actually really high performing people that align with my values. So I don't have to be, managing them all the time, but more giving them space to kind of make my business better.
Let's talk about finding people, because I mean, you kind of went there, so let's just continue that conversation, because so many people out there are, of the mindset that it's, the person I'm looking for is a unicorn. They don't exist. They're not out there. It's such a tight marketplace. There's no attorneys looking for jobs. I mean, the list of excuses of why we can't find that person goes on and on. And I'm not brushing them aside, and I'm not saying they're not valid, but we look at somebody like you who's assembled a team that you're excited and proud of, that you are, elevating on a pedestal, that is really allowing you to step into the best version of yourself, because they're A players. They're making sure that the job is getting done. They're owning the responsibility of what they need to do. And I might be putting words in your mouth, but I kind of felt this and read this between the lines as you were saying it. So what do you have to say to those people who are struggling to find the person they're looking for, or they think that that person doesn't exist? Were you ever there? Did you ever have that, like, I'm looking for somebody and I'm maybe I'll have to settle for somebody else, or because you're not just looking for a family law attorney, right? You're not just looking for somebody who has experience. You're looking for somebody who's heart-centered. You're looking for somebody who wants to take names, right? Like, that's what you kind of shared just a moment ago. That kind of narrows the pool even further than looking for that family law attorney. So talk about that experience that you've had, and maybe perhaps you can shed some light on that for our audience.
Yeah, when I was pregnant with my son Noah in 2023, I had this a team of where we were all kind of integrated like a family, and two of the attorneys left to start their own firm, and I had to rebuild my team. And I took for granted just having people. We were together before we went fully remote. We all really knew each other, and that was hard to lose them. So I had to find people that I trusted again, and that took me it took me multiple tries. I don't think, you know, just like in finding the right clients, we try to be a good judge of character. We look at the resume, we look at the credentials. I try to find people that have been through real life and understand what it's like to navigate, a client who's suffering from a mental health issue or their spouses or, substance abuse, and with the knack for, being a warrior in the courtroom and those kind of reps, but I'm not going to get it right every time. And I think it's that if I don't get it right, it's being honest and transparent and authentic with the people I hire so that we don't, no one needs to be fired. There doesn't need to be any bad blood. If people aren't the right fit because they're not able to meet the performance metrics or they know it pretty quick and we part ways, and it's just really making that, I guess, a priority and a conversation that continues until I get it right. Because I know I'm not going to get it right because I'm just as bad as everyone else at this.
You know what? I really, really love the raw honesty and authenticity in your response because you talk about your team, you talk about your eight players, and people, they kind of sit there and think like, oh my gosh, like how in the world did she do it? What was her secret? Like, how come she didn't have to go through what I went through? And what you basically just said is, I went through what you're going through. I just came out the other side because I went through enough candidates and enough mistakes and enough, misjudgments that I just got a little bit better at it and I finally found my people, right? Like, and that's kind of the answer. The answer is you got to get the reps in. You got to try. And yeah, you're going to make some mistakes along the way. You're going to get some people who are not there. Another thing that you said, and you kind of just like blew past it, you just blurted it out is, yeah, if they don't hit their metrics, then, I let them go and we move on and we know it didn't work out. But even that little tiny subtle statement, so many law firm owners don't know. Like, what are those metrics? Like, how do I even judge somebody and decide if they're worth keeping or not worth keeping? Many people, and I have a video that came out today on YouTube. The hire slow, fire fast, idea. And my team is just repurposing a talk that I did at the summit. Interestingly, one of these, YouTube spam commenters came by and made some sort of comment about this is why I sue every employer that I work for, or something like that. But anyway, this 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 idea of hire slow and fire fast, the fire fast part we all struggle with. Like, we get the hire slow part, we take our time during the interview process, we try at least, and we hope we're making the right decision. But then once we have somebody, because we lead with our hearts and because we're such nice people, we don't want to let them go because we think that we're doing something wrong to them, or we think that they might improve and we might be able to change them. So talk about that. I mean, I think that's a really, really tough thing to own and to decide. Like, it's not working out, and you're going to find something better somewhere else, and I'm going to move on and look for the next person. Um, what's been your experience there? How do you measure it, and how do you come to terms with that as a business owner?
Yeah, I mean, I've been terrible at this for, I don't know, probably my first 6 years. I was really terrible at this. And then I had my son, and I couldn't be home with him because I had to be in the trenches of putting out fires in my business as I rebuilt my team. And I just saw every minute, every 15 minutes that I was away from him as, not great. So all of a sudden, somebody not performing, I used to see as an opportunity for me to create better policies and procedures and train them and connect with them and kind of get them to right their ship and or all together or whatever. And I still do see that as an experience, and it has helped me create more policies and procedures. But at the same time, I wasn't willing to spend too much time away because I had this dream of I want to get my team right and build it up within 6 months because I don't want to miss any more days with Noah. And so that's kind of what propelled me to be a lot more clear on what I needed. I talked to a HR consultant I worked with for a bit, and he told me, Valerie, you're letting too many people on your bus. You need to decide, like, does this person really get a seat at the bus on the bus? And he made me realize that hiring employees for me, at least personally, was a lot like trying out boyfriends when I was trying to find my husband. And like, does this person really deserve to be in my life or not? And it's the same thing with employees. And I just never thought about it like that. So I kind of went through dating boot camp, but for hiring employees with this HR consultant for a couple months to kind of train myself on my picker. I feel like I had a psychologist to help me train my picker to find my awesome husband. And I needed that same kind of help to train my picker so I wasn't inviting drama onto my bus. And I think now I just kind of it's really I still don't want to say I have a good picker though. I think what I've really learned from this too is inviting other people with maybe also bad pickers, but in different ways than mine. So now I involve my office manager who sees things I don't see. I involve my senior attorney to help interview people to see things I don't see because we're all a bit lost in some way, right? But we all have different strengths that we can add to kind of help decide who should get a seat on this bus. And I think that's made us possibly make less mistakes in hires. But I don't really want to say I have the holy grail of knowing who to hire because I don't, I think it is reps and it's the self-awareness to know, that I suck still and that I need to, constantly be aware of red flags and just do the best I can and not give myself too hard of a time when I screw up.
Yeah, I love that, the other thing is really, and this is something that my clients, often when they're post firing somebody, they'll say, I should have trusted my gut, right? And in hindsight, you're always like, I knew there was something off with that person. I went with for it anyway, and it didn't work out, and now I should have trusted my gut. I think that if we listen to our intuition a little bit more loudly and a little bit more clearly, we probably do a better job too, because we're really, really smart individuals and we know who we're attracted to and we know who we're not. And if we're not attracted to the person, and I don't mean in a physical or sexual way, I mean like just we connect, right? Some people connect and then some people don't connect. And if the person's annoying me in the interview process, they're probably going to annoy my team and they're probably going to annoy me afterwards. And if we connect and I like that something about them, then that's somebody who I want to kind of look into more. And it's very non-scientific, but every individual business owner is their own individual. And we have to recognize that and realize that this person might be a perfect fit for somebody else, but
Totally.
not for me.
And I think when you do find that right person after, months of being in the desert, it's so exciting to have somebody that you really vibe with and you're excited to learn from. And, once you find that, it adds so much more joy, in running your business. So it's just getting through the muck, you know.
Yeah, I love that. We're almost at the tail end of this conversation. There's so much that we should and could dive into, but what I want to do is I want to just turn the tables on you and just kind of say like, okay, if we think back on your entire journey, you're before you owned your firm, going and making the decision to get to open your own firm, the early days, the revamp, fire everybody or let it or everybody leaves, you start all over again. You've been through a lot. If you look back on your journey, what do you think was the best decision you've made, and what do you think was the most challenging time in your business? It's two separate things. What was the best decision that you've made, and what was the most challenging thing that you came across, and how did you overcome that?
Yeah. I think that, oh boy, the best decision that I've made is probably to believe in myself. I mean, it might sound silly, but I think there's a lot of different people sharing what you must do. And I think for me as a business owner, it's knowing to trust my own gut of what I need to do, what cockamamie system I need to build that's going to work for me personally. Like if you saw the playbook for scheduling a meeting on my calendar, it's absurd. Like I had a consultant say, like, I don't think Tim Cook's is as complicated for his VA. But it's like, what do I really need to be the happiest version of myself, especially as a mom of two kids? So I think like trusting myself has been a big decision that's created the most impact that I constantly forget to do. And then you asked me what was your second question?
Second question was the probably the biggest challenge that you've had to face, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, I think a big challenge that I've had to face in running a business is, being a leader of a business. I've always looked at least 10 years younger than I am and sounded 15, 20 years younger. And it's been hard for me to kind of grow into myself with each level of success I've experienced. And, that might sound silly, but even like having a team of employees when I just started my firm at age 30, it didn't feel like authentic for me to be their boss. And I think that's been a journey in itself that I'm continuing to be on is just, I don't think I'm ever going to feel like the leader of my firm that knows everything that, could boss everyone around with authority. That's just not my style either. It's being, more softer and more intuitive and just finding my own way to lead and grow business. That's probably different than, most people think is the right way.
Yeah, I love that, and I love that you went to your your process for your VA to put something on your calendar. That's something I struggle with my team. I tell them don't put anything on my calendar before 10 a.m.
Yeah,
I'm dropping my kids off at daycare and at the sitter, right? Like there's no way I'm going to be at my desk until 10 o'clock, and then they'll put an internal meeting on the calendar at 9:30, and I'm like, why do you think I was going to be there? It just
totally.
you got it. We're working around around the daycare schedule. We're working around the little league schedule. We're working, those are the bookends, and it's in between that we get to work, and that's basically it. So you gotta kind of navigate that, figure that out, understand the school schedule. Kids are home from school. Don't put anything important on the calendar because it's just not going to be a good productive meeting.
Totally. Yeah, nothing scheduled from 12 to 2 because I got to pick my daughter up from preschool and see her get all excited to see me. I don't want to miss that. And then I got to
Yeah.
put her down for a nap, and that's more important to me than anything else.
Awesome. Love that. Valerie, this is a great conversation. Really appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast and share it with our audience. As we leave, one parting piece of advice or wisdom for our listeners, and then if they want to reach out and get in touch with you, how might they be able to do that?
Yeah, sure. I think one piece of advice that I would give is to, if you're having trouble hiring and finding your team, is to really think about what kind of job opportunity you're providing to your people that others aren't. I know for me, it's being fully remote and having, systems and good support staff, but what makes you uniquely situated? I know we think about that in terms of clients and, how we can help our clients, but I think we need to think about it even more and how we can really, show up for our employees and what we're selling to them in a sense. And I think that will kind of change the landscape for you. In that regard. If I'd love to hear from you. I'm at Valerie at FenchelFamilyLaw.com, or you can find me LinkedIn where I, share nonsense about whatever I'm like learning or thinking about. Yeah, it's really been a pleasure, Moshe, to be on your podcast and to learn from you. And I'm just, I'm always excited to see what you're up to and listen to your podcast. So it's really been an honor to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, Valerie, for sharing and for that. Folks, we're here every single Thursday with another great episode, another amazing law firm owner, expert, industry expert, somebody exciting to learn something new from. So if you want to get notified every time we release a new episode, make sure you hit that subscribe button in your podcast player or on YouTube, so that you can be notified. But more importantly, this episode was the bomb. I mean, like, this was just such a great conversation. Think of somebody that you know is a law firm owner that would benefit from hearing this discussion. Think of somebody who maybe they're a mom with young kids, maybe they're a dad with young kids, maybe they're a family law attorney, and maybe they're not getting the level of success. Maybe they're hiring somebody. We had a lot of great pieces of this conversation that are worth sharing. Think of somebody who can use it. Take this episode and send it to them. If you can't figure out how to share it in your podcast player, send them to profitwithlaw.com, where every episode is listed there, and tell them to take a listen to this one. Sharing this is the best thing that you can do because you're helping somebody else, and that person is now going to turn around and share it with another person, and so it goes. And we love doing this. We love getting behind the microphone, but we want to be expanding who we reach and the influence that we're having on their lives. So hopefully you got a ton of benefit from this. We will see you next week on Thursday with another great episode. And thank you, Valerie, for joining us and being so open, honest, and authentic with us. I really love the conversation. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.